When I was a little boy, quite many years ago, in fact about 50 years ago, geez, I'm getting older. That's why they got the grey hairs, but that's not because of the age, that's because of my wife. But when I was a young man, my mom and dad took me out and my brother, and we went out to have a meal. And we had a starter, then we had our main course, and then we had our dessert, and we were also allowed to choose a cold drink. So we each had a starter, a main course, dessert, and we each had a cool drink. And then my dad gave a tip to the waiter. And that bill came to less than 5 rand. Oh my giddy aunt. Okay? Imagine paying 5 rand for a 3-course meal for 4 people and including the tip. $5. Guys, nowadays, $5, you can't even pay a car guard for $5. Okay? 5 rand does absolutely nothing in today's life. So what happened between 1967 and 2018? What happened to all our money? How come for 5 rand I could buy so much, and yet nowadays I can't do anything with 5 rand? When I was in high school in matric, I remember taking a girl for a double thick chocolate milkshake, okay? And like not just a milkshake, we're talking a large double thick. And it cost me 1 rand. How cool is that? And that's not that many years ago. Okay, it is 1985, all right? 1 rand for a huge double thick chocolate milkshake. Nowadays, you're going to pay a little bit more than 1 rand for a shake. So what's happening with all this money? Guys, it's all to do with this whole concept of inflation. Now, what is inflation? Let's have a look at it. Inflation is the increase of the price of a typical basket of goods and services over a period of time. Okay? So how do we calculate interest? So the way interest is calculated, or one of the ways interest is calculated, is people will go out and they will buy a basket of everyday goods. Okay? So they get a basket at the entrance to a certain shop, and they will buy certain stuff. They then pay for the stuff and they see the total cost of those goods. The next year, they'll go to the same shop and buy the same basket of stuff. Take it to the till, add it up, and they now get the new price. Okay? And the difference between last year's price and this year's price is now compared. And the interest or the increase, okay, the percentage increase in the price of the goods is what we would term as inflation. The price has gone up. It's only one way of working out the inflation rate. Another way is they look at different services. Okay? So for example, how much does it cost to fix up my car this year? How much will it cost next year? Let's look at the difference and calculate the percentage difference, and that's going to be looked at or taken into consideration as well when the final inflation rate is calculated. All right, so what we are now going to do is we are going to look at a few inflation calculations. Right, so what I could buy in 1967, folk, I'm not even going to think about that this year. In fact, here's an interesting thing. In 1970, my parents bought a home. Okay, they bought a 3-bedroom house. Okay, it was a tiny house, it really was, but it was a tiny little house. It had a bathroom, a lounge, a dining room, and a kitchen, and it cost them 4,000 rand to buy that house. A few years later, when I was in grade 3, so I must have then been, how old are you in grade 3? Hey, 6, 7, 8, 9, maybe 10 years old, 9 years old, 8 years old, somewhere around there. So about 44 years ago, they went and they bought a huge house, 4 bedrooms, double garage, swimming pool, okay? And they paid 27,000 rand for that house. Some years later, they could sell it for over R1,000,000. Something happened with all the money, and that's to do with this whole concept of inflation. Right, so what kind of questions could they ask us in a matric paper to do with inflation? Let's have a look here. A litre of milk currently costs R9.11. The expected inflation rate for 2015 will be 6.5%. What will the price of the milk be in 2015? Okay, hard to believe that in 2014 milk cost R9.11. Now it costs a bit more than that, doesn't it? So how do we calculate this inflation? Now guys, some series back we looked at percentages, and inflation involves this whole concept of percentages. So let's look at it. I've got R9. Let's just get a pen here. It's always good to have a pen when you write. R9.11. We're going to either multiply or divide, and we've got 100%, and we're going to either add or subtract 6.5%. Now, we are trying to find a new figure. Okay, so if the price was R9.11, will it be higher or will it be lower the next year? It's going to be higher, isn't it? So we're finding the new price, so we're going to multiply. And what are we going to multiply it by? 100%. The price go up by 6.5 or did it go down? It went up. So we add 6.5%. So my calculation is actually R9.11 multiplied by 106.5%. Let's get our calculator. Now our calculator is going to do that for us. We don't have to think. R9.11 multiply that by 106.5%. And we can push the percent button if we want to, or we can say divide it by 100. And my answer is R9.70. So the price for that bread is R9.70 the following year. Can you see how it's increased? Okay. So in 2014, the milk, the litre of milk cost me R9.11. The following year, that same milk is going to cost me R9.70. Right, next question. The price of Nike shoes in 2014 is R650.95. What was the price of Nike shoes in 2013 if the inflation rate for 2013 was 6.4%? I just want to stress something here. When it says the inflation rate for 2013 was 6.4%, it doesn't mean that everything went up by 6.4%. It means the average increase for a whole variety of goods was 6.4%. But we are going to use this in this calculation. We're going to pretend that Nike shoes actually went up in line with the inflation rate of 6.4%. So we've got our amount of R650.95. We're either going to multiply or divide, and we've got 100%, and we're either going to add or subtract 6.4%. Now, we are trying to find what was the figure last year. So we're expecting the figure to be smaller. So I'm going to divide it. And did it go up in price or did it go down? It went up in price. So my calculation is actually going to say, cool, 650.95. We're going to divide that by 100 plus 6.4 is 106.4%, or 106.4 over 100, and my answer is going to be 611 Rand and what's it, 79 or 80? 80 cents. So it's 611 Rand 80 cents. So if I had bought the shoes the previous year, I would have saved quite a bit of money. Okay, my next question. A box of Jungle Oats increases in price from 17 Rand 99 to 19 Rand 99. Calculate the inflation rate for this period. Right, so far, our previous two examples, we've looked at what will the price be next year. The next example, what was the price last year? And now we're looking at an example where they give us the price for last year, give us a price for next year, or last year and this year, or this year and next year. And now they're saying, well, what percentage did it increase? In other words, we are now calculating the percentage difference, or in this case, my inflation. Now guys, we should know this. This is a formula you have got to learn. You've got to know it, you've got to understand it, because this kind of question comes up year after year after year after year. And that is the difference in my percentage, okay, or the inflation rate. So the difference in the percentage is going to be difference is equal to, or the percentage increase rather, let's rather call it that, okay? So, oops, let's get a rubber. So I'm going to say here my percentage increase, or in this case, my inflation, is going to be the difference in the price over the original price. And we are trying to find inflation, and we know that's as a percent. So I'm going to say times 100%. So what is the difference? Well, the difference in the price is 19 Rand 99 minus 17 Rand 99. All over what was the original price? The original price was 17 Rand 99. And I'm going to multiply that by 100%. So let's have a look at this calculation. We've got 19 Rand, I don't know why I'm doing this on the calculator, you should be able to do this in your head, minus 17.99, and I get an answer of 2 Rand. So 2 Rand divided by 17.99 multiplied by 100%. So we've got the 2 Rand on my calculator already. I'm going to divide it by 17 Rand 99 and then multiply it by 100. And my answer is 11.12%. So 11.12%. Now, I have to stress something, okay? I just got to stress this. Can you look at this sign here, this percentage sign? Now, so many people, and this is a topic that's been debated and debated and debated, because a lot of students will look at this and say 2 Rand divided by 17.99 times 100, and they push the percent button on their calculator. And they land up with a ridiculous answer of 0.1112. Guys, this percent button is not being pushed on my calculator. Why? Because I'm carrying that percent button down as my answer. So in this case, the percent button doesn't form part of the calculation. It's actually a unit, because my answer's got to be in percent, so I'm not using it in my calculation, I'm bringing it down to my answer. So I'm just going to say 2 Rand over 17 Rand 99 times 100, get my answer, the percent by the 100 becomes part of that answer right here. Okay, do we understand that? So please don't make that mistake in your exam, and so many matrics do that, where they say times 100 and they push percent on their calculator. In this case, this percent is a unit. The answer's got to be as a percent, so we keep that percent and we don't push it in our calculator. Please remember that for my inflation calculators, and also remember that when I'm looking at percentage increase or percentage decrease. Okay, we're moving on now. I want us to look at inflation graphs, and I've got 4 minutes to do this, and so let's have a look at this kind of example. This comes from an example of a past paper that was written by one of the departments. I'm not sure exactly which one, but it's very interesting to look at. And if you understand this, you'll understand quite a lot about inflation rate. Okay, so when I look at this is the inflation rate of housing in South Africa over a period of time. So in 2007, the inflation rate for housing was 20%. What does that mean? That means if I bought a house in 2006, that property would have increased in value by 20%. Yes, like. So if I bought a house for R1,000,000, next year that house, or in 2007, at the end of 2007, that house would have been worth R1.2 million. How cool is that? Okay. Now let's have a look what happens in 2008. In 2008, my inflation rate drops to 0%. Now I want to stress something. Doesn't mean the value of the house has dropped by 20%. It means the inflation rate has dropped by 20%. So where my house last year, or in 2007, was worth 1.2 million, the next year my inflation rate is 0. In other words, the price didn't go up and it didn't go down. It remained the same. Inflation rate was 0%. So in 2007, my house was worth 1.2 million. In 2008, it's still worth 1.2 million. It has not decreased in value. Inflation rate decreased, but the actual value of the property did not increase. But now let's see what happens in 2009. In 2009, the inflation rate drops to 10%, a minus 10%. In other words, the value of my house has now dropped by 10%. So where my house may have been worth R1,000,000 in 2008, by the end of 2009, that value has dropped by 10%. Worth R1,000,000, lose 10%, 100,000. My house is now only worth R900,000. Okay. In 2010, look what happens here. The inflation rate of houses went to minus 2.5%. That doesn't mean inflation rate increased, okay, or the value of my property increased. My property still decreased by 2.5%. So the inflation rate got better, but it was still in the negatives. So although my property decreased by 10% in 2009, in 2010 it still decreased. It decreased by 2.5%, okay? But it's not as bad as a 10%, but I'm still losing money. In 2011, the inflation rate for houses dropped to, was minus 5%. So my value of my property is decreasing by another 5%. In 2012, look what happens here, okay? I get still minus 5%. The inflation rate hasn't gone up. It hasn't gone down. It's remained at minus 5%. Although the inflation rate has remained the same, it's still at minus 5%. So the value of my property is still going down by 5%. Sure, this is confusing, eh? The following year, my inflation rate for housing is 0%. In other words, if my house was valued at R1,000,000 at the end of 2012, by the end of 2013, it's still R1,000,000 because inflation rate has got better, but it's sitting at 0%. So my value of my property is not going up, but thank goodness it's not going down. Then in 2014, all property went up by 5%. Do you understand how this graph works? Okay, it looks very confusing, but if you understand this, okay, understand that although the rate might drop, okay, although the rate might increase, it doesn't mean that property of my house is going to drop or increase. So let's have a look here. Let's say, for example, in 2011, the interest rate was 25%. Inflation was 25, and in 2012 it was now 15%. Okay, we look at that and we say, right, the inflation rate has dropped, but it doesn't mean the price of my house has dropped. My house that year went up by 25%. The next year it's still going up. It's only going up by 15%, but the value's still gone up. So even though inflation rate has come down, because it's still a positive inflation rate, it means my house is still getting better in value. This inflation stuff can get quite confusing, hey? It really can. But so interesting. So what have we done in this session? In this segment then, we've covered the following. We've said what is inflation, and we've also learned how to calculate inflation. And then we've worked with graphs illustrating inflation rates. This has been a great session. I trust you've enjoyed it, and I will see you after the break.